Thank you. Councilman Henry will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is the consent agenda. Is there any item any council person would like to remove from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 5, presentation to City Council by members of the public according to the rules stated in the agenda. Have no cards. Is there anyone here wishing to speak at this time? If not, we will move to item 6, presentation of CO Series 2022 Plan of Finance by Hilltop Securities.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Members of Hilltop Securities. They're just going to go over our plan of finance for the upcoming 2022 bond series that we adopted in our budget. So I will hand it on over. Molly has your slides.
Okay.
We've already embedded.
Right here. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mayor, Council, good afternoon. Jorge Delgado with Hilltop Securities. What we have in front of you today, and I'd like to walk you through this and, of course, take any questions you all may have. This is a plan of finance intending to fund a number of different projects that city staff has been funding and the city for a period of time. And what we like to call this is also a continuation of a year-long process of planning. You may recall back in October we refinanced some debt and you locked in some nice savings there. The goal there was to lock in some savings and open up some room to finance new projects, capacity and flexibility going forward. A big piece of this plan is a continuation of that refinancing. And what this plan entails.
Do you want this? Yeah.
What this plan entails is the funding. I'm going to go through the general overview of the projects, and I'll defer to Mr. Listenby to the specifics. Funding of street and sidewalk improvements, park improvements, municipal facilities, and water and wastewater treatment plant repairs. This would be funded with the issuance of certificates of obligation through 2022. Just like you issued a very similar process, not the same as when you issued certificates in 2021. This would have two repayment sources. The bulk of the certificates of obligation is for the street and sidewalks, the park, the municipal facilities, for $6 million. That $6 million is to be repaid for out of your debt service taxes. And there's a component to be funded out of your water and wastewater system fund net revenues, and that is the water treatment plant repairs, water and wastewater treatment plant repairs. The whole goal here, as we planned through this, was to fund those $6 million from your debt service side without an impact to your existing tax rate. This plan achieves that, and again, that's a result of the refinancing, opening up what we call a window refinancing. Bulk of your debt was dropping off, you increased in value, you achieved savings, and we're able to fit all that in there at the current budget that you have without having to impact that tax rate that you set last summer. And your wastewater and treatment plant repairs are funded also with minimal to no impact to your existing utility fund. So it's a very efficient financing in that there's no impact to your debt service tax. Based on current net revenues that we have audited, there's hardly any impact, if none. And I'll show you the cash flows in a bit to your utility fund. The process, the entire certificates would fund $7,750,000 worth of projects. It would be a 20-year repayment period, just like your 2021 certificates. We would go through the rating process, work with your city staff to get on a conference call. We do have to do that every time we issue debt in the open market. We did tell them twice, the rating agencies, that we would issue future projects. We told them back in January and back in October when we did the refinancing, so they know it's in there. And the expectation is that we're going to get affirmed at an A+. We'll push to get higher, but there's no reason to believe we wouldn't get an A+, and that would be the objective here. Finally, we would bid these out competitively, like we did last time. We would get the low bid and present that to you the evening of April 19th is when we're targeting the competitive sale. Let me just confirm that. April 19th, take bids in the morning. We would present you the low bid, and at that point you would be taking formal action to lock in those rates. And then we would set a closing about 4 weeks later. We got to get through the legal, get it approved by the Attorney General's office. If we hit all these dates, we would be closing on May 17th, and the city would have the funds in the bank. Very similar, if not the same process to when you issued certificates back in January, or when you refinance, meaning it's the same process as far as getting it rated, getting the bids, presenting those to you, and you taking formal action at the time. Any questions, council, that you may have?
If none, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, discussion and possible action on a resolution directing the publication of a notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation.
Great, good evening, Mayor and Council. So what he presented, it was a non-action item. It was just kind of our plan of finance, how we go through the steps, what it's gonna be used for, and kind of our schedule of dates. What you have before you is our notice of intent to issue the certificates of obligation. And this is just the notices that we would put in the newspapers and on our websites. By law, we have specific deadlines that we have to hit in order to put these notice of intent in. It lists out the amount of money that we are going out for, the dates, the location, everything that kind of encompasses all of that. So this is a roll call vote. And I believe that there is some kind of specific information that you have to say if you would like to move forward with this resolution.
Mayor, if I might add, bond council did allow us to add a clause to this resolution to allow for reimbursement. You recall we've done a couple of projects in the past where we may have expended funds on the project prior to receiving the proceeds. And a reimbursement resolution allows us to use some local funds to get it started and then pay ourselves back with the proceeds. For a couple of these projects, there are going to be some equipment items that have long lead times that we may want to place an order early before May. We appear to have the cash most likely in May, but if we want to place orders for some materials before May, this resolution includes a reimbursement clause to allow us to do that.
And how do we proceed?
Staff recommends approval of the resolution directing the publication of notice of intent.
I move to adopt.
Would someone make it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I move to adopt the resolution directing publication of notice of intent to issue certificates of obligation.
Second.
It is roll call. All right, we'll start with Mr. Henry.
Yay.
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 That motion carries. There is a need to hold an executive session at this time. We will be meeting under the provision of the law 551.0711 and 551.0712, consultation with attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Texas Open Meetings Act, and consultation with the attorney regarding pending or contemplated litigation and questions related to the remainder of the agenda. Is there a motion to go into
Motion to.
recess into executive session? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carries. We are recessed into executive session.
At what time?
Exactly 6:10. Discussion and possible action on a resolution of the City Council of the City of Commerce, Texas, authorizing the filing of the Texas Community Development Block Grant Program application to the Texas Department of Agriculture and authorizing the mayor to act as the city's executive officer and authorized representative in all matters pertaining to the city's participation in the Texas Community Development Block Grant Program.
Mayor, Council, City Manager Howdy Lisenby, before we open the public hearing, I want to go over, there are a couple of documents that were on the table out in the back that were available to be picked up. We're required to make this handout available to anyone, and so it contains just some information about the grant that we're going for. The Planning and Capacity Building Fund is the grant application that we're applying for. Application is due on March the 16th. Funding comes from the Community Development Block Grant, which is administered by the Texas Department of Agriculture. TDA and CDBG, lots of acronyms to throw around like we were the military. This is a 90-10% grant, and so if we're approved, the grant would fund 90%, we would fund 10% out of local funds. The second sheet is actually a copy of an email between myself and the consultants that are helping with this. There's a number of different studies that are available through this grant. We are not going to go after all of those individual studies. This is basically an update to the city's comprehensive plan. A local comprehensive plan is kind of a picture of who we want to be when we grow up and how do we propose to get there. We are not going to do a street conditions study in this plan. The city has just recently performed most of that study work. We don't want to duplicate those services. We're choosing not to do a water system or a wastewater system study. Those have been done, and we're not proposing to do a storm drainage study. We're not saying we don't have a storm drainage problem. We have a significant storm drainage problem in this community. But again, that study was done a number of years ago. We still have that data. It's good data. And so we don't want to duplicate those services. Everything else is definitely a conversation this community needs to have as we look out into the future and decide who we want to be when we grow up. And so that's the information that we have to present. And so, Mayor, we would now encourage you to open a public hearing for any comments from the public.
It is now 6:48, and I open a public hearing related to agenda item 8. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to it? If not, I close this public hearing at 6:48. Is there a motion related to item 8?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Number 9, public hearing, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a request by Stephen Hudson, EST, Inc., for approval of a replat of lots 9 and 10 Jenkins LR addition in addition to the City of Commerce, Hunt County, Texas. The division of the property is known as 2112 Mangum Street, 1518 Ninth Street, 516, I said 15, that's 518 Ninth Street, 516 Ninth Street, Commerce, Texas. And it goes through the property IDs and a whole lot more description that you can refer to the agenda if you need to read it all. Could we hear about this, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Howdy Lisenby, City Manager. We received a request to replat a lot. I attempted to provide a little bit of visual. Molly, did we end up inserting those? I am not a surveyor by any stretch of the imagination, and that didn't show up very well. All right, so close your eyes and imagine with me, if you will. You have 3 existing homes that sit on 2 legally defined lots. These were constructed several decades ago, so it's a pre-existing situation. And traditionally, you want 1 home or structure on 1 legally defined lot. And so the request was made to take these 2 lots, break them up into 3 to more accurately reflect how the land is being used in practice. It also allows the lot with two homes, if they wanted to sell one home and keep the other, they couldn't unless they're on their own legally defined lot. And so we felt like it was a pretty common sense request that was given to us to take two lots, break it into three to reflect the existing structures that were there. The only complication is that when we redraw these lines the way the surveyor has done it, it immediately creates what's called a non-conforming use. Our zoning codes have setback requirements that spacing that homes and structures have to be away from each other and away from property lines. And there's no way to replat this without violating those setback requirements. And so we went to the Planning and Zoning Commission to get approval for the replat and to allow a variance for these structures so that we can go ahead and approve the replat. P&Z did vote unanimously to approve this replat, and so the next step is to come to City Council for approval. Staff is recommending approval of the replat as it's been designed and presented by the surveyor. The last thing I'll say, there was some confusion. State law requires that we send notifications to the property owners that are around this area, and the state is pretty strict on what we can and can't say in those notifications. One of the things that we have to do is identify what is the current zoning of these lots. And the zoning that was applied to this years ago is called A2 or apartment zoning, which allows for multifamily use. These three structures are not multifamily homes. They are not apartments. And at this time, we have received no request or indication for the construction of apartments. But some of the surrounding property owners were confused because we're replatting in an apartment zone. They thought that meant someone was fixing to come build apartments. That is not the case. We have not received any application for building permits for an apartment in this particular area. They're just wanting the legally defined lots to reflect the structures that are already there to make life a little easier moving forward. And so this does require a public hearing. Mayor would recommend that you open the public hearing now.
It's 6:53. I open a public hearing related to agenda item 9. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to the agenda item? If not, at 6:53, I close this public hearing. Is there a motion related to item 9?
Make a motion that we approve the replat.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Roll call.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item 10, discussion and possible action on a resolution of the City Council of the City of Commerce authorizing the mayor to execute Texas Subdivision and Special District election and release forms for settlement with the Indo/PAR and Tiva and any future release forms as part of a global opioid settlement led by the Texas Attorney General, and authorizing submission of settlement participation forms and authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute necessary documentation and providing for an effective date.
Mayor, if I may, this is coming to you as a request from the Attorney General's office. They are representing the Texas Attorney General's office, representing the state of Texas and the counties and subdivisions of this state in regard to opioid litigation, which is not just in Texas but across the country. The particular settlement we have here involves Johnson & Johnson Company, which you have looked at before, as well as the distributors, which is, you already mentioned, Indo and Tiva. This approval of a settlement will put us in line for the settlement that has been negotiated. It could involve payment to Commerce under the term sheet that the Attorney General has published of up to $33,869 to be used for various things in what we might call the war on drugs, which would include public education, training for our first responders, as well as materials, say for instance, to outfit our ambulance to respond to overdoses. from opioids and whatnot. It is presented to you for your consideration, and if you approve, we will let the Attorney General know that we are in for whatever settlement they are able to get.
Any questions?
For the record, staff recommends that we do participate and get any money that we can get.
Is there a motion?
I move that we authorize the mayor to execute the Texas subdivision and special election release forms for this opioid, and authorizing the mayor for his designee to execute necessary documentation and providing for an effective date.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 11, discussion and possible action on a resolution of the City of Commerce City Council to approve the purchase of a generator from Clifford Power for the use by Commerce Water Treatment Plant, and authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute any necessary documentation.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that is a long time coming, and unfortunately is still a long time coming. If you'll recall, in February of last year, during Snowvid or Snowmageddon or whatever affectionate term we choose to use, not just Commerce, but most of the state of Texas lost power for a significant amount of time. Many municipalities and their water treatment plants at that point did not have backup power generation. It was not a requirement of the state. The only areas of the state that required permanent backup power generation were those along the coast that were subject to hurricanes. People didn't reasonably anticipate the kind of snowstorm that we had and the impact it had on the grid. And so we did not have a generator. We were not able to find a generator in a timely manner a year ago. And so we were already working on the design of a rehabilitation project for the filters at the treatment plant. And so we asked our engineer to add components to allow for the addition of a backup power generator. You may be surprised to know that you can't walk down to Home Depot and purchase a generator like this. And the plant designed 70 years ago wasn't wired electrically to anticipate a generator. And so the engineering work has been completed, the design is done. We had to submit it to the state. You can't touch a treatment plant unless the state gives you the thumbs up. We got the thumbs up in late December, and so we started finalizing how we were going to approach this project. What staff is recommending tonight is that the city go ahead and purchase the generator as it's been designed and specified, and not wait for the general contractor. If we order the generator today, it's 9 months away, and we would really like to have it in place before next February, when winter can sneak up on us again. By placing the order now, it starts that construction process so that the generator can be built, get it here a couple of months sooner than it would be if we waited on the general contractor. The last thing is, if we wait on the general contractor to order the generator, they're just going to mark it up 10 to 20% and then sell it to us. We propose to cut out that markup. And so tonight we have found the generator that meets the needs as designed by the engineer. We've priced it out through a state buy board purchasing contract for $106,912. That's way below the budget the engineer projected for the generator. And so we're asking for permission to go ahead and make that purchase, place the order on the generator, and then when it comes in, the general contractor that we select will install it and get it running.
Any questions? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the purchase of the generator from Clifford Power and authorize the city manager or his designee to execute any necessary documentation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 12, discussion and possible action on a resolution of the City of Commerce City Council to approve the purchase of a mini excavator from Holt, Texas, for use by the Commerce Public Works Department, and authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute any necessary documentation.
So, good evening, Mayor and Council. If you remember last month, we brought to you a previously approved budget item for a tractor and boom mower for our Public Works Department, but we decided to pass on that motion due to the ever-increasing price of that piece of equipment. And instead, we have decided to bring in front of you this Holt Cat mini excavator. Recently, we have an old machine that has stopped working and that we are in dire need of replacing. Currently, we are doing a long-term lease so that we can continue doing our day-to-day operations. So this is a Holt Cat provided machine, which we are trying to provide going through our buy board, which is a government agency, purchasing agency. It still has a 7 to 8 month lead time before we can get the machine. But if you would let us authorize using this, it's still under budget of our original budget for the original machine of the tractor and boom mower, which was $88,500. And this machine comes in with an extended warranty of, I believe, $78,000. It would still be a 5-year lease, which is what we were budgeting for in our original budget. It would just have a cost savings of $10,000. Do you have any questions?
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the purchase of the mini excavator from Holt Cat, Texas, and authorize the city manager or his designee to execute any necessary documentation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 13, discussion and possible action on a resolution authorizing the award of contract to Heartland Park and Recreation LLC for the construction of playground improvements at Ivory Park and City Park, and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. During the budget process for this fiscal year, we also adopted the 22 CIP, or the Capital Improvements Plan. Some of the projects that were included in that plan were playground improvements to both City Park and Ivory Park. Staff proposed and council approved the development of what's known as an inclusive playground, which is a playground facility that is designed and constructed to allow accessibility for special needs and mobility needs children. And so that is being proposed for City Park. And then we also proposed a project at Ivory. That park has not received any investment in, I would say, decades. It's been a long time. And the playground there, the equipment is aged, and our insurance company really doesn't like that style of playground anymore. And so we're proposing to completely replace with a brand new playground and outdoor fitness equipment. We went through the TIPS state purchasing contract for this and worked with Sean at Heartland Park and Rec. So I'm going to invite Sean to come up and explain to you what they have designed and proposed. I will say that as it is currently proposed, we took these designs through the Parks Advisory Board, had a series of meetings with them, and the Parks Advisory Board has voted unanimously to recommend these playgrounds as designed. Sean, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm Sean Spencer with Heartland Park and Recreation. Like was introduced, we worked with, kind of started and did some design, then we worked with your Parks Board, designed playgrounds for the 2 different park areas. And if I can hide that just without disrupting each other. You guys have some pictures, and then I also have some.
Did the tab get closed?
Yeah, I think something closed me to that. I can get back to the And I was gonna say, I know you have a busy agenda tonight, so I don't wanna take up too much time sharing the slides. Okay, so,
first, once this gets up, we all know who we are. First project is City Park, and like was indicated, City Park is a good park, has good playground equipment. It's well thought out, well designed, kind of in the circled area down there, which we'll zoom in on. The request was presented to provide inclusive play to the area. So what we've done is we've kind of, there was a void created by the curbing in the park, what's up on the screen. We kind of went in and we're gonna fill in that void with inclusive play. Inclusive play, when I say to a group of anybody about that we're providing inclusive play, the first thing that comes to your mind is a child in a wheelchair or a child in a walker. That's only about 1% of the children that we deal with in inclusivity and play design. The vast majority are more on the autism spectrum. There's more mental disabilities that we deal with, really the physical. We're providing for all of these things in this play space. In the center of it, you have and I'll go to the next slide, which just kind of strips away the background so you can see it a little bit easier. We provided kind of a main primary play structure in the middle that provides a lot of shade. We provided pretty much everything in the design to when you're dealing specifically with mobility devices, the idea of getting a child in a wheelchair and walker up onto a playground is very difficult. So how we kind of eliminate that challenge is we do a lot of ground level play. So we have a lot of panels, play panels, textures, musical instruments. There's kind of a cave in the bottom side of it, and that's a big in play design. That's a big factor because children that get overstimulated when they enter into a colorful, loud, vibrant playground area, it's a place to decompress, watch, make sure everything's safe, and then they can enter the play space as they feel comfortable. It's also fun to climb on, right? So, and that's kind of one of the big premises in play design is that any child in your community that enters this playground, it's going to be fun, and that's the main thing. It's not stripped down or anything. It's fun and enjoyable for everybody. One of the things that we did in the city park design is we have a unitary surface. So we're going to provide a turf surface. So it's not the wood chips or anything like we have currently in town. So it can be accessed with a wheelchair or with a walker or with any kind of device, accessed easily, navigated easily. It's the ideal space the ideal way to provide these kind of environments. And kind of in the top corner there, you see there's a merry-go-round that it's a 0 entry. So it sits at grade. So a wheelchair, a walker, anybody can enter onto that, spin, play, and it's fun, definitely fun for all ages. It spins fast and is scary and dangerous and does all the things that kids want. We have some benches, additional benches inside of the area for parents, caregivers, everybody. It's kind of a nice shady spot in there. It's a great park, so I mean, I think adding this is going to add a lot to the area. You can see kind of exiting out, we're going to provide sidewalk access that ties back into the primary sidewalk, so you can go from your handicap parking spot onto the sidewalk into the playground seamlessly without having to touch the grass, the dirt, or the mud. I think that's kind of, that's kind of the area. I think we're proud of the area. I think it's going to add a lot to the park. I think it's needed. I think we work all over the state. Commerce is not alone. Every community is needing to update for these kind of needs. And you guys will be well ahead of the game when this park is completed. So it's going to do the trick. The second is Ivory Park. It's a little more of a blank slate. See if this thing is I can talk about this goes. So this is a fly through that, and you can just watch it as we're talking. But kind of the idea here was to throw as much big, fun, exciting playground equipment into this park as we possibly could, and that I think we accomplished the goal. It's a little more open, so we have shade on everything. Everything that we're putting in there has shade on top of it. The swing set has integrated shade. There's a 2 to 5 unit for the smaller children and a big 5 to 12 unit for your larger, older, more dangerous children. That you can see as it's kind of spinning around, there's a thing that looks like a Christmas tree. That guy is about 20 feet tall and it spins. So you climb up it, you climb through it, and the kids on the outside can spin it and make it spin. So it's a lot of fun. We're going with engineered wood fiber on this, and the reason being is is an ADA approved surface, we can expand that footprint and put a lot more equipment in this park, and it's much needed. There are many inclusive elements in this park as well, so we didn't ignore that aspect in this park. We're providing for the same here. Both of the playgrounds will have concrete ribbon curb around them. They're gonna have, all of them have access, back, sidewalk access provided into it. Slide, and we'll look at a couple of pictures, still pictures, if I can get that. Okay, so there's kind of an overview look. This is a big playground, a very big playground. So it'll be good towards community pride. It's a good project for the council to do. It takes up a lot of space. There'll be people that come from far away to play on this playground. People will bring children into the area specifically for this one, as well as City Park. I think with City Park, we have some media and stuff that we can provide for you guys that says, hey, we've got this and we've developed this, and this is what it's for, all of your children's vulnerability. Between between Dallas and Tyler, you guys are gonna have be able to provide for the best of anybody in these areas. Big and fun was the goal. I think we accomplished big and fun. A couple of images, just looking at it from some different angles. It's gonna be a great playground. There's our little 2 to 5 area. The other element that we're putting at Ivory Park is going to be 2 extra adult fitness exercise areas. They're kind of, when you walk up to the main pavilion, they're gonna be to the right, the playground's to the left. So if you're walking to the pavilion or towards the basketball court, we're gonna kind of tuck those into the trees, provide sidewalk access to them, put some good shade on top of them. They're pre-designed kits, so we didn't have to pick a la carte. They're already pre-thought out. They have instructions on how to use them. We put these in a lot of communities and are always surprised how much they're utilized. Your citizens that live in this area and people that drive into the area will appreciate and like them. Also has ribbon curb and turf surfacing on top of them, so there's a little bit of fall protection in case anybody wants to climb up on top of them. It gives us a maximum of a 2-foot fall height, so they're safe. It's a good base to exercise and work out on. That's everything I've got to tell you guys. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And I will say one more thing. Your park board is a pleasure to work with. Good people, ask lots of good questions, are very, very engaged. You should be proud of the people that you have appointed. They're good people and we're a lot of help.
Any questions?
What's the longevity of these projects?
So on playground equipment, there are warranties and then there's longevity. So everything that's vertical that goes into the ground in concrete has a lifetime warranty. So all the steel, all the powder coating has a lifetime warranty. We hope to extend the life of the playground equipment by putting the shade integrated on top of it. The thing that beats up playgrounds the most in Texas is the sun beating down on the plastic. So we do everything we can to keep the sun off of the plastic. I can warranties and everything aside, I can confidently say these are 20, 25-year playgrounds without a problem.
Does that include the surface?
The surfacing as well. The surfacing is, of course, now the engineered wood fiber has to be added
Right.
kind of every year. The turf surfacing it's going to carry a 10-year warranty, and turf is good because it's easy to repair. So if one of our citizens decides to start a campfire on the turf and they burn up a spot of it, you just go cut it out and reseam a piece back into it. The turf material itself, the stuff that's on top, it's going to outlast. It's more than a 20-year project. It's very durable and lasts a long time.
Awesome.
What about the material on the awnings for shade?
All of the awnings carry a 5-year warranty for defects. We catch a 90-mile-an-hour wind, it's gonna blow the awnings off. They're not that expensive to replace when and if that does happen. The labor component to it is very simple. They have little elbows that go in and out. You put the new shade on, it tightens up and it holds it on there. Each one of those shades, if they need to be replaced due to wind damage, would be somewhere around, say, $700 to $1,000. So they're not that expensive. Shades do fail for sure. They get beat by the sun, they get beat by the wind. When properly installed, they can stand up to the lot, and these are very high, they're very thick nap, very durable shades. They're made for playgrounds. We put a lot of them up, and I would say on average, and we put them up in the Panhandle, we put them up all over the state in wind conditions. Under normal wear and tear, they should last from just sun damage 10 to 12 years.
Good. Any other questions? Is there a motion related to this item?
I move that we award the contract to Heartland Park and Recreation for the construction of the playground improvements for Ivory Park and City Park, and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Sean. We appreciate it. Item 14, discussion and possible action on a resolution authorizing the award of a design-build contract to Heartland Park and Recreation, LLC, for the design and construction of a splash pad at City Park, and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Howdy Lisenby, City Manager. Also included within the 2022 Capital Improvements Plan was the development of and the construction of a new splash pad, which is a water recreation facility. Basically a playground with water. It's zero depth, does not require lifeguards, does not require staff to be there on a daily basis, but it does provide a quality water recreation experience for our children that is seasonal in nature, but many cities have begun to move in this direction. We chose to go design build, which gives us a lot of flexibility, but it also gives us a tremendous amount of budgetary control. And so working with a selection panel of some of our advisory board members and city staff, we went through a selection process. We had 7 different companies submit for the opportunity to do this splash pad project. We took those 7 down to 4, conducted interviews. Through that process, the selection committee chose Heartland Park and Rec as the best value proposition for this project. As you just saw, they're already going to be in town doing some playgrounds for us. This allows them to also bring their expertise into the design and construction of this splash pad facility that will also be at City Park. One of the complicating factors is that it's going to be on top of the old swimming pool. And so we're doing some geotechnical evaluations right now so that we can factor that into the design for how the splash pad goes. At this point, we have not yet designed the splash pad, so we don't have pretty pictures to throw up on the wall. You have to tread carefully on a project like this, because since we haven't started design, there are pictures we could put on the wall, but we haven't designed anything and take that design and put a budget to it. And if you're not careful, you can throw up a really big, awesome, pretty picture, and then what you build is a little bit smaller and everybody's disappointed. And so we're going to get into the design process a little bit so that we know the pictures that we bring you are definitely within our budget. And so the contract that we have in front of you is a design build contract. And so there's some unique features to this that are different than traditional construction. Our budget for this project, as it was put in the CIP, is $1 million. We're actually proposing to slide a little bit of money away from the splash pad and beef up the Ivory project. And so since we're working with Heartland on both of these, that's easy to move some budget around. Probably going to end up in the neighborhood of $940,000 for this project, which is still going to be one of the largest splash pads in this region of the state of Texas. It will be a regional draw. There will be people that come to Commerce to see and experience this recreation. A couple of the decisions that we've made so far that are impactful, when you're doing a splash pad, usually some of the fear is, can my kids get sick from this water? All of the cases that have been shown where kids are exposed to cryptosporidia or other types of water bacteria are splash pads which recycle the water. If you're going to recycle the water, you take fresh treated water from the distribution system that has all the appropriate chlorine residuals, You spray it up in the air, you spray it on the surface, it goes in a drain, then you recycle it back through a small water treatment plant, and then you respray that water. Facilities that have a failure in that secondary treatment are the ones that end up with kids getting sick. It doesn't happen often, but again, there's the outlier. We are not proposing to recycle any of the water, and so all the water that goes through this splash pad will be fresh, potable water that has got all the appropriate chlorine residuals through our drinking water. And then once it's sprayed, hits the ground, goes into the drains, we're then going to use that water for irrigation within the park so that we can add landscaping and keep it irrigated and healthy and not try to recycle. That saves probably $200,000 on a project like this, and $200,000 is a lot of money on a project like this. The last piece is that you are not authorizing me tonight to go spend $940,000 on the splash pad. By approving this contract, you're allowing us to work with Heartland and his design team to start the design of this playground, this splash pad, and we will subsequently come back to you with a guaranteed maximum price that is within our budget for the construction of this. You will have opportunities to see the design. The community will have opportunities to give a little bit of input into that design. All we're doing is authorizing a design-build contract with Heartland Parks and Rec to start this project moving forward. Finally, I cannot promise that we will have water for the kids to play in this summer, but it is our goal to have something in the ground by the end of this summer. That's our goal. That's what we're going to be driving towards. But as I've said many times, I would rather move right than move fast. When you move fast, you make mistakes, and those mistakes are usually expensive. And so we're not going to commit to having water this summer. That is our goal. And we'll drive in that direction with due diligence and speed. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the award to Heartland Park and Recreation for the construction of the splash pad at City Park and authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documentation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 15, discussion and possible action on a resolution approving a task authorization order with Friesen Nichols related to downtown improvements and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Yet another project that you authorized within the 2022 Capital Improvements Plan. I guess it's safe to say at this point that if you give us a budget to move on, we're going to move on it. And we've got more stuff happening than this little community's seen in a while. I think our head's probably spinning. One of the projects that was anticipated within this capital improvements plan was some investment in downtown infrastructure. Our downtown is improving. There's some momentum. We've seen some economic life happen, but there are still some needs that are infrastructure related for our downtown. The bulk of this project will most likely be repaving the parking lot that is known as the farmers market area. As downtown comes back to life, we need more parking. As we do events in the downtown area, we need more parking. The city owns that parking lot. It's not in great shape. This will allow us to put some money into and rehab that parking lot, as well as potentially install a larger metal multi-purpose pavilion. There's a wooden shed, I guess you would call it that, some wooden poles and a wooden roof that the farmers market uses during the summer. That will come out and likely be replaced. There's some sidewalk improvements that are needed. There's some things that we need to do to create spaces for things to happen in our downtown. However, before we do any of that, we need a plan. You don't solve problems by throwing money at it. You solve problems by coming up with a plan. And we've been working with Friesen Nichols. Alan is here tonight. And they have proposed Task Authorization 1, which is part of an existing contract we have with them that allows us to do some master planning for our downtown. I ask my staff frequently, who do we want to be when we grow up? you need a plan to figure that out. And so this is a process by which Freese and Nichols and their team will come into the community. We'll have a series of meetings with stakeholders, with people that are in their downtown or that are invested and interested in our downtown, so that we can determine what the future looks like. And then we'll spend money in ways that move us in that direction. We don't want to spend money and create problems in the future. And so, Alan, if you would, just come talk a little bit about what this planning process looks like and what we're proposing to do.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me out here. Again, I'm Alan Hendrick with Freese and Nichols. I'm kind of pinch hitting tonight for our urban planning and design director, who was in a meeting in Fort Worth until 5, so couldn't get out here by the right time. So anyway, as Howdy mentioned, we are proposing to work on a downtown plan for you. We know what we know the existing plan that you have. We're going to work from that, but obviously we don't want to give you a plan back like what you already have. So our downtown plan is what I would term a land use master plan light. It's going to be a very lean and succinct plan that probably 40, 45, 50 pages long, that has some pretty pictures and some maps and some diagrams and some verbiage about different catalyst projects that you could work on, as Howdy mentioned, sidewalk, farmer's market, the park area possibly. But it will be a series of meetings. We have a kind of a chronological scope of work that has about 12 to 15 tasks on it. We do propose the formation of an advisory committee. That's 6 to 10 people, could be elected officials or community leaders, Chamber of Commerce, just somebody that's invested in the community, that kind of knows what you want and kind of knows the vision for the community. But we have a kickoff meeting would be our first task. We met with a group of y'all out here a couple of months ago, kind of know what you're looking for, but we want to build on that with the committee. Task 2, well, task 1 would include the first meeting with the advisory committee, just to get the introduction and ideas out on the table. Task 2 would be building from existing material, collecting materials, collecting maps, collecting information. Task 3, working on a baseline map and getting ready for, determining land uses and identifying land uses and parcels and parcel data, vacant lots, underutilized properties, areas where additional improvements are needed, just to kind of get ready for the discussion with the advisory committee and city staff as far as where are we going with this. So task 4 would be basically stakeholder interviews. We're proposing a series of 3 interviews with different types of stakeholders, community leaders, landowners, downtown businesses. They can be in person or they can be virtual. It's just a matter of gathering more information about what do you have, what do you need, what are the ideas for the downtown area. Task 5 would be this second meeting with the advisory committee in advance of delivering of a conceptual land use plan. The land use plan would define some goals, character images of things that you might want to be looking for. It's going to be pretty graphical. It's not going to have a lot of verbiage and context, but it's going to be graphical and projects and catalyst type projects that can be done. Leading into preliminary design concepts, after the catalyst projects are kind of identified, and this is kind of the direction we want to head towards, preliminary design concepts. Leading on, going from there into some branding. Task 9 would be the third meeting with the advisory committee, and we're proposing 2 public meetings. That would be the first public meeting, and leading into an illustrative plan, which is where the pretty pictures start coalescing and kind of giving you an idea of what some of these ideas could look like. To a draft summary report, final meeting with the public, with the advisory committee, a second public meeting, and then a final report. The proposed timeline, assuming this gets approved tonight, we propose to deliver it sometime right before Thanksgiving. There's a lot of meetings that are involved, and a lot of coordination needs to be done. So there is quite a bit of work to do to get it delivered, but looking forward to assisting y'all with this.
Any questions? Alan, we thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the tax authorization with Freeze and Nichols and the city manager to execute all necessary documents.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 16, discussion and possible action on a resolution authorizing the award of a design-build contract to HWH for design and construction of the Commerce Animal Shelter project and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation.
Mayor, Council, the final project on the docket tonight also comes from the 2022 Capital Improvements Plan. It is the development of or the expansion of our animal shelter. This has also been a design-build process where we went through a multi-stage procurement and selection process. We had 3 very reputable construction companies that submitted to do this project. We ended up doing interviews with all 3 of them, and then the selection committee made a best value recommendation. In full transparency, we had a company called W.B. Kibler that was the recommendation of the selection committee. And what I try to do when we go through one of these design build or CMAR delivery processes is once the selection committee has made a recommendation, I'll start having contract negotiations with them just to make sure that we can all agree to the fundamental terms of the contract. I don't want to come to the council, have you approve a contract with the company, and then I start negotiating and figure out that we can't agree to terms. And so in this case, we started negotiations with W.B. Kibler. They had some things come up in their company, and they could not agree to this contract and had to step away. And so that happened with enough time for us to reach out to Harrison Walker Harper, or HWH, which is a construction firm out of Paris. They were the number 2 recommended company, and they were very eager to take on this project. They are the construction company that built City Hall. They also built our current public safety building. So we've got some experience with HWH. They're a reputable construction company. And so we did some preliminary contract negotiations. They have agreed to all of the primary terms of the contract. There's still some minor things that we got to work out that are just basically fill in the blanks. But some of the high points, again, in a design-build contract, you are not authorizing me to go spend $1.5 million on an animal shelter. You're not authorizing me to spend that money right now. You're authorizing me to do a design-build contract with this company to start the design process. And as we go through that design process, we will come back to you, and you'll have opportunities to review the designs and approve any budgets before construction activity starts. It will be done through what's called a guaranteed maximum price. For example, if we go through design and the builder says we can build it for $1 million and we lock in a guaranteed maximum price of $1 million, then they start construction. If it costs $1.1 million to build it, they have to pony up the extra $100,000. They're at risk, and if it goes over budget, they have to pay the extra part, not the city and not our taxpayers. However, with the guaranteed maximum price, you have the option, if they say it's going to cost $1 million and we actually get it built for $900,000, then there's a savings of $100,000 that we get to realize. The way I propose these contracts is you can give incentives to the builders to either beat the schedule or beat the budget. And this project is not really driven by a schedule, so I'm not proposing a contract with any scheduling incentives or early completion bonuses. I am proposing a contract in this case where we incentivize them to come in under budget. And so the way we've proposed this contract with the builder is that if they come in under budget based on that guaranteed maximum price, we will split the savings with them 50-50, half to the city, half of the savings goes to them with a cap of $15,000. I don't like to give an incentive of more than 1% of the project. And so this company, they bid, I think, 6% overhead as part of the price. And so if they come in under budget, they have an opportunity to make another 1% profit on this project, but it forces them to push and drive and make sure that we can come in under budget. At all times, we have control on the budget for the project, and once we lock in guaranteed maximum price, we will not pay more than that guaranteed maximum price unless we initiate a change and agree to spend more money on it. And so the last thing that I'll say at this point is the scope of work as we've got it anticipated is to expand the existing shelter. We have about 4,000 square feet that we use to provide services to our community. Based on the budget we have, we feel like we can reasonably double the square footage, potentially add another 4,000 square feet of usable space. That will definitely improve the level of service that we can provide to our community and to our stakeholders. At this point, we have not had any discussions with Hunt County. We currently have an agreement with Hunt County for animal control services. We will be revisiting that agreement, and if Hunt County wants space and capacity within this shelter, we're going to ask them to put money into the project. And so if they want additional space for their needs, we're going to ask them to fund that additional expansion. All of that will happen during design, but ultimately we'll end up coming back to the council with a guaranteed maximum price for your approval at a future date. And so staff is asking for you to authorize a design build contract with HWH for our animal shelter. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there a motion?
I move that we authorize the award of the design build contract to Harrison, Walker, and Harper, design and construction for the animal shelter project, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We've already addressed items 17 and 18. We're now ready for our city manager's report.
There was no public input to respond to at this point, so I'll hand it over to Ms. Jamie for our financial update.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So I do not have monthly financial updates for you today, only because we are right in the middle of our audit, which is going very well. They have 4 auditors working on it at once, and we are hoping to have an audit report for you next month, which is very quick because they've been only working on it for 14 days. So we will start with property tax. As typical for January, we have reached 74% collections for our budgeted tax levy for our revenues that we've collected, which is a total of $2,521,000 and some change. For delinquent taxes, I know it's really hard to see, so we have received $20,000 for delinquent property taxes and an additional $12,000 in penalties and interest, which is about 6.5% of our total outstanding delinquent taxes, which I think kind of goes back to selling off some of the properties that we have and just people catching up on their property taxes. And if you remember, here in Commerce, we have a really high collection rate of between 97 and 99%. So it's always really good to see people purchasing those lots, purchasing those homes, and paying off that small delinquent, which is only $300,000. So it's always nice seeing that dwindling down. Moving on to sales tax. So we do have a very large spike in February that is out of the norm. And what this is that we have one vendor who is making a payment that's related to past months that they had previously missed in error, okay? So it's about $30,000. So it's out of the ordinary. So if you back that out, it actually belonged to the previous fiscal year. If you back that out, we're still over budget. We're still over what we were in February last year. But if you take that out of the equation, you know, it's going to kind of skew everything. But since they paid it with this month's sales tax, it's in this month's report. So it's going to skew everything a little bit. But we are at just about 50% of our budget. And I also just want to note, I've discussed it with the auditors, but because we were already over our budgeted amount, they find it immaterial. They don't feel like we need to backdate that 30,000. And so we're just going to keep it in this fiscal year and just keep rolling with it. I was looking at you, Stephanie, for that question. So again, that spike is in retail. And the increase is related to that one specific vendor, as previously discussed. Even by excluding that payment, again, we are greater in this February than we were last year. We're still continuing to see an upward trend in manufacturing, construction, retail is still going strong. Accommodations and food services, again, still going strong. So we're still seeing that uptick. We're still seeing recovery from COVID. We're still seeing great growth here in commerce.
One of the things I'll add that is, depending on which side of this conversation or whether it's promising or not, our sales tax numbers continue to grow. Enrollment is actually down at the university. And so that's not great for the university to have their enrollment numbers down. But even with lower enrollment numbers for the university, we still see economic activity growing, which means to me that some of this is not being driven by the university, but rather the city having economic activity that's being generated. And that's a very positive thing for us.
As the mayor likes to say, shop local.
Every chance you get.
Every chance you get. And buy online and ship it somewhere in commerce. So, again, just like our retail trade, you're going to see this skewed a little bit because of that one vendor. And I will say that because of these detailed reports, we were able to isolate that and do some analysis and kind of find out, like, what was that skew. And we were able to contact that vendor and say, hey, something doesn't seem right. And they were able to correct their books because we were able to isolate it. So I think that that's really great. It's something that we have available to us. And because the comptroller is so quick in responding to our open records, I think it's really great that we can do that in-house. So my team is really great, and I'm proud of them. So just because it's skewed, I don't want to sit on this retail for too long, but online sales are up. They continue to be up. But moving on to accommodation and food services. So since May 2021, we have seen that steady sales tax trend in accommodation and food services. We do see a drop a little bit when summer is out, or school's out in summertime. But back now that their schools are back in session, we're seeing it trend back up. But again, like Howdy's saying, even though their enrollment may be down, we're still seeing that trend go up. We're still seeing new restaurants come into town, new, what do they call it? Drinking places, as they call it here in the comptroller's office. That was kind of funny, drinking. So we're seeing growth. We see it time over time, month over month. And so if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Done? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Molly, do we have a calendar of events?
I have a couple for you. We discussed this last month, but just as a reminder,
The filing period, recall that we have a general uniform election date on May 7th, but in reality, you all are hosting a special election concurrently on your uniform general election date. So while early voting and everything like that, election day, all those dates will be consistent for both elections. As a final reminder, the filing period for the position of mayor ends this Friday at 5. So if anyone intends to run for mayor, that has to be done by this Friday at 5 o'clock. And then the filing period for your special election, which as you recall is to fill an unexpired term for place 4, a 2-year term, that deadline is going to be the following Thursday at 5 o'clock. And then we'll draw for the order of names on the ballot that next Friday. So this Friday, 5 o'clock is the deadline for filing for mayor. Next Thursday, 5 o'clock is the deadline for filing for place 4. A couple events the community asked us to share with you all. Lions Club is holding their annual Texas Hold'em tournament. That will be the evening of February 26th at Sand Hills Country Club. I provided a phone number there for you should you like to register. I'm happy to email that to you should you need that information. Currently, our Commerce Parks and Recreation, in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club, is hosting, they're providing for their online registration or in-person registration for baseball and softball, youth baseball, softball, and t-ball. So we encourage you to visit commercerecreation.com or stop by City Hall to register your kiddos for that. I believe the deadline for registration is March 5th. And finally, Commerce FFA is hosting their annual alumni auction and fish fry. That will be at the Commerce High School cafeteria on Saturday, March 5th, and that will begin at 5 o'clock. That's all I have.
Molly, before you finish, I would like for you to inform folks of the team you put together to have a delightful Valentine celebration that was posted yesterday and
Sure.
created a lot of excitement.
So we had, the council approved in the fiscal year 2022 budget the addition of a intern from the university who's focused primarily on communications, improving communications with the city to our citizens. So she is very active on our social media. She's launched the city a Twitter account, so follow us on Twitter. And then we'll be launching in the coming weeks. We'll also be launching an Instagram for the city. I feel so old saying this because I'm not familiar with Twitter or Instagram or any of these accounts, but she's been phenomenal. It's just another great example of a partnership between the university and the city. It allows this individual at the university the experience of getting to practice marketing and communications on behalf of a city. So it's great for her, it's great for us. And one of the ideas she had was she wanted to showcase some couples in commerce that have been married for a period of time and what does a successful relationship look like. And so we put together, I can't say we, she put together these videos and broadcasted them to our Facebook. I really encourage you to go take a look at them. They're fantastic content. It's kind of something new for our city Facebook, but the intent is to direct traffic to our Facebook. For the longest time, I think if people needed to know information, they didn't really know where to go. So our hope is visit our social media pages more, follow them, and then it's not just all work and dates and reminders and pay your water bills, but it's also some fun stuff like the videos you all saw yesterday. Our fire and police department also jumped in, and everybody loves those public safety posts. Officer Morales was featured in our police department night shift, and they left some good poems, and we hope that you all take a look at that content on our social media. And a big thank you to Kayla, our communications intern, for putting all of that together.
Thank you.
Please don't take offense if you were not contacted to to participate in this. You'll notice a lot of city staff and council members. We hope maybe in the future we can extend that beyond the city. But successful marriages within here, and if you, never mind.
Yeah.
The mayor was on there. Mr. Reel participated as well. We had quite a few people who said, my wife or my spouse will not do that. So we featured 5 couples, and we hope maybe to expand that in the future.
Mayor, for project updates, I just have 2 things that I want to bring up. It doesn't require action, but I think I can safely ask for at least a nodding of the head. First one is going to be the Raw Water Motor Control Center that is out at Lake Tawakoni. This is a project that has been kind of a thorn in our side for a while. We are scheduled to open bids this Thursday. However, we've got one contractor that we know is going to bid. We have a second contractor that is waiting on a final piece of pricing, and he requested that we extend the bid date till next Thursday. We're going to accommodate that. We can allow for a bid opening on the 24th and still comply with the grant requirements, but we had reached out to you all about the possibility of having a special meeting on the 22nd to award that contract. We do not need a meeting on the 22nd. And so we had already talked about a meeting on March 1st as kind of the budget kickoff. And so we'll likely have a contract award on that meeting on March 1st. And so we plan to open bids on that motor control project for Lake Tawakoni on February the 24th with the intent to award a contract on March 1st. That meets the deadline for the grant extension, allows us to keep that project moving forward. The last thing that I want to mention is for our street and sidewalk improvements. Alan is here. We've been working on the Freeze and Nichols. They're still moving forward on the design of Washington Street. This will start at Live Oak in Washington and head south all the way to Culver. As they've been working on the design of the street reconstruction, my utility team and I have been looking at the existing water and sewer utilities that are underneath Washington. We initially felt like there were going to be a couple of sections that we needed to go in and replace. We felt like we could do that ourselves and have that done in time for the proposed construction of Washington. We've done some further evaluation of some of those sewer lines. They're much deeper and in much worse shape than we had anticipated. And so I am proposing that I go get a contract to do some design on those sewer lines, in which we'll probably hire a contractor to replace those lines. Once you start getting more than 8 to 10 feet deep on a sewer line, you have a lot of trench safety, you have a lot of issues that our staff doesn't deal with on a daily basis. If you don't do it on a regular basis, it increases the safety risk. I would rather hire a contractor to bring in some equipment and do that really deep work rather than put our staff at risk, because we simply don't have the tools to do that much work that deeply. But I can't hire a contractor unless I have an engineer do some design. That takes some time. And so what I'm saying at this point is that we may not be constructing Washington Street this summer because I need to get some utility work done first. And there's nothing worse than putting brand new pavement and then immediately cutting it open and doing utility work. Nobody likes that. And so we had been driving towards trying to get some street work late summer, early fall of this year. We may delay that a little bit to buy some time to do some sewer work on those underground utilities. And so I will be bringing back to you in the coming weeks a potential design contract to do some more work on those sewer lines. And so you'll hear more from me on that project in the near future. Mayor, that's all I have for our update, and we turn it back over to you.
Any questions of the city manager? If not, at 7:54, I adjourn this meeting.
We canceled one on the 22nd, and then when do you